Welcome to Featherlight Stories. One new story every Sunday and Thursday. This is episode 4, The Three Princesses. In a land with very few rivers and lots of sand, our Lord had 3 daughters that were born on the same day and were known for their exceptional beauty and charm. The first daughter, the one the Lord considered his heir to his lands, as she was the one who came out of her mother's belly before the other 2, was somewhat lazy and liked to spend her days sunbathing in the magnificent gardens that surrounded the Alcazar, the palace in which the daughters and their father and his father and his father's father grew up. One day it would all be hers, because that is the advantage of being the oldest child, even if her sisters came on this earth within just several counts after her. The first sister who did so was the equally beautiful but hard-working one, known for constantly telling the servants in the Alcazar to keep the rooms just a bit tidier, cook their meals with a tiny bit more attention, or to make sure the folding lines in their silk seats were perfectly straight. Because, according to her, that is how things should be. She didn't understand how her older sister could just lie around all day, just as she couldn't understand how her younger sister wasted her days inside the library, reading books and studying old scrolls and parchments. The youngest sister did indeed spend many hours in the library, but she wasn't reading books, nor did she even ever touch one of the ancient scrolls that were worth more than what the servants of the Alcazar earned in a lifetime. Instead, she sat in a corner next to one of the colored windows, hidden between 2 large wooden bookcases. There, she had installed a small desk, and sitting with her legs under it, she started drawing and painting as soon as the sun had risen high enough to provide her with enough natural light, until it came too close to the horizon again and the light inside the library started to dim. Only one of the servants knew her secret, and it had to remain a secret because her father would never allow her to be seen as an artist. Artists were respected as long as they were good enough to earn their own money and wouldn't have to count on other people to give them food and a room to sleep in. As the daughter of the Lord of the land, she did not have to earn any money. She could sleep in the Alcazar, and she would be taken care of by servants her whole life. This is why nobody would accept it, especially her father, who thought his reputation and that of his family was extremely important. But she was an artist, because her drawings of simple things like the flowers she could see outside her window, the chandeliers above her, the ancient books around her, and even the portrait of the one servant that visited her while she sat there, they all looked better after being copied by her pencil. Since the Lord's reputation mattered so much to him, he was not against the idea of a visiting king who ruled over the lands near the sea. That was all about him marrying one of the 3 daughters. It would be a great wedding, and people would still talk about it by the time they were old. So the father agreed and invited his 3 daughters to sit with him in the inner garden, the one that lied in the middle of the palace, surrounded by beautifully decorated walls with paintings, statues, and lined with small palm trees. Servants pretended to tend for the nearby plants and trees, eavesdropping the conversation between the lord and his daughters. "My dear daughters," he began, "I have fantastic news. One of you is going to marry the king of the lands by the sea." The three girls sat quietly on their pillows, holding their teacups with their disappointed faces partially hidden behind wisps of vapor and smoke, the first coming from their drinks and the second from the incense that was burning on the low table in front of them. "I know, no, I am sure. All three of you can't wait to say yes and bring much fortune to our family. But unfortunately, this honor can only come to one of you." The middle sister pointed at the other two. "She would love to lie on the beach all day, of which her new home will have plenty. And she studied the history of her husband-to-be's family, and her knowledge will surely impress everyone over there." The eldest raised her shoulders. "I'm perfectly fine here in the gardens. Also, as the heir of your lands, Dad, I don't think it's a good idea to marry me to someone far away." Next to her, the middle daughter took a sip of her tea. "Who's going to run this place if I live in another palace? The servants will become lazy, the gardens will become a desert. Your precious books," she nodded at her younger sister, "will be covered in dust. Unless you want to take them with you, of course." The youngest looked sad and shook her head. "I don't want to get married, and not only that, but there are also so many more things for me to learn here. I want to wait at least a couple more years." Their father stood up and looked at his daughters. "I see I was mistaken. My own daughters refuse to accept their father's decision. But fair enough. If none of you is willing to accept this honor, I will not force you. But the king by the sea will be angry, and he might decide to send his army and take what was promised to him. We must give him something else instead. I will invite him back, and in the meanwhile I want each of you to think about what you can offer him to soften his temper." And so the Lord sent his messenger to the land by the sea, from where just a few days later an army marched to the Alcazar, and three girls who now had to come up with something to please the angry king. As he stood at the head of his powerful army in front of the walls that surrounded the Alcazar, he looked up at one of the balconies where the eldest of the three daughters appeared. "Are you the one who will return with me to the land by the sea?" he asked. "Great and wealthy king, I have something better to offer you instead. After years and years of worshipping the sun, I have become so intimate with it that I can offer it to you. Take the sun as your own, and with it become the greatest of all the kings in the world." "You offer me the sun? What difference will it make? It rises for me every morning as it does for everyone else. Calling the sun my own would be like declaring myself king of all the animals. They wouldn't understand. They wouldn't obey me." The second daughter appeared. "Are you the one who will return with me to the land by the sea?" "Great and wise king, instead, I offer you knowledge, all combined in a book that contains all the secrets on how to make your servants obey you. So they will keep your palace brilliant and well organized. With this, you will be able to rule like no king has ever done before. You offer me wisdom I already possess. Had you obeyed your father and traveled to my lands, you would have witnessed how well everything is organized. Had you offered me all your servants, even then I would not have accepted. The youngest daughter stepped forward in front of her two siblings. Are you finally the one who will return with me to the land by the sea? Great and mighty king, it is obvious to me that not a single thing my father has, you don't already have, except for one of his daughters. Therefore, I offer you everything. This whole palace with its gardens and riches, and I will even include what my sisters offered, the sun and the sky, and all the servants that work here below them. Her lord father grabbed her by her shoulder. What are you doing? We'll lose everything we have. Father, would you really rather lose one of your own daughters? The king from the land by the sea smiled. I will leave now and take my army with me, but in 3 days I will return and claim what you just promised me, your palace and everything else I can see from here. You have our word, mighty king, the youngest daughter replied, with her father trying to catch his breath beside her. My dear, I love you and your sisters more than anything in this world, but for the sake of us all, couldn't you at least visit the king and see for yourselves if it would really be so bad to marry him? If you really do love us that much, then you will be glad to see what I want to show you. Please, follow me to the library. Once they got there, the youngest girl climbed on one of the large bookcases by pulling herself up on the higher shelves. She grabbed something from the top and handed it to her father, who looked surprised when he reached out his hands to take hold of a large painting. You see, she said, it took one of our servants months to walk in and out of the library to tell me about the details of the buildings, the gardens, the walls, and the sky and sun above. But I think it's all pretty accurate. The lord and his two daughters gazed at the magnificent artwork. Indeed, what they saw was a perfect mirror image of their palace and the surrounding lands. She had not only painted the architecture and statues, animals and plants and trees, but the lord, her sisters and herself, and even each servant was present. He couldn't take his eyes off it while he stuttered, You made this? I know you disapprove, Dad, but yes, this is mine. It's beautiful. The girl smiled in relief. It's everything the king was able to see. When he returns, he shall be given all that was promised to him.